Hello, hope everything okay is with my microphone and with my camera. And I'm a bit sorry to say that I'm late today. Actually, it's been a really hard week for me. That's why I'm late. And I didn't have a proper lie-in this week, maybe for several weeks, and it's really pressing me. However, I still really want to read today's chapter, today's extract of a chapter. And yeah, here I am, and we're starting about 20 minutes later. Yeah. Okay, so. mm, I'm reading chapter 3 and we're starting from page 31. Yeah. Okay. Um, Scalability and globalization. Whenever you hear a snotty and frustrated European middlebrow presenting his stereotypes about Americans, he will often describe them as uncultured, unintellectual, and poor in math. Because, unlike his peers, Americans are not into equation drills and the constructions middle brows call high culture, like knowledge of Goethe's inspirational and central trip to Italy, and or familiarity with the Delft school of painting. Yet the person making these statements is likely to be addicted to his iPod, wear blue jeans, and use Microsoft Word to jot down his cultural statements on his PC with some Google searches here and there, interrupting his composition. Well, it so happens that America is currently far, far more creative than those nations of museum goers and equation solvers. It is also far more tolerant of bottom-up tinkering and undirected trial and error. And globalization has allowed the United States to specialize in the creative aspect of things, the production of concepts and ideas, that is, the scalable part of the product, and increasingly, by exporting jobs, separate the less scalable components and assign them to those happy to be paid by the hour. There is more money in designing a shoe than in actually making it. Nike, Dell, and Boeing can get paid for just thinking, organizing, and leveraging their know how and ideas, while subcontracted factories in developing countries do the groundwork, and engineers in cultured and mathematical states do the non creative technical grind. The American economy has leveraged itself heavily on the idea generation, which explains why losing manufacturing jobs can be coupled with a rising standard of living. Clearly, the drawback of a world economy, where the payoff goes to ideas, is higher inequality among the idea generators together with a greater role for both opportunity and luck. But I will leave the socio-economic discussion for part 3 and focus here on knowledge. Travels inside Mediocristan. This scalable, non-scalable distinction allows us to make a clear-cut differentiation between two varieties of uncertainties, two types of randomness. Let's play the following thought experiment. Assume that you round up 1,000 people randomly selected from the general population and have them stand next to one another in a stadium. You can even include Frenchmen, but please, not too many out of consideration for the others in the group. Mafia members, non-mafia members, and vegetarians. Imagine the heaviest person you can think of and add him to that sample. Assuming he weighs 3 times the average, between 400 and 500 pounds, he will rarely represent more than a very small fraction of the weight of the entire population, in this case, about a half of a percent. You can guess even more aggressive. If you pick the heaviest biologically possible human on the planet, who yet can still be called a human, he would not represent more than, say, 0.6% of the total, a very negligible increase. And if you had 10,000 persons, his contribution would be vanishingly small. In the utopian province of Mediocristan, particular events don't contribute much individually, only collectively. I can state the supreme law of Mediocristan as follows. When your sample is large, no single instance will significantly change the aggregate or the total. The largest observation will remain impressive, but eventually insignificant to the sum. I'll borrow another example from my friend Bruce Goldberg. Your caloric consumption. Look at how much you consume per year. If you're classified as human, close to 800,000 calories. No single day, not even Thanksgiving at your great aunt's, will represent a large share of that. Even if you try to kill yourself by eating, that day's calories would not seriously affect your yearly consumption. Now, if I told you that it is possible to run into someone who weighs several thousand tons or stands several hundred miles tall, you would be perfectly justified in having my frontal lobe examined or in suggesting that I switch to science fiction writing. But you cannot so easily rule out extreme variation with a different brand of quantities, to which we turn next. The strange country of Extremistan. Consider by comparison the net worth of the thousand people you lined up in the stadium. Add to them the wealthiest person to be found on the planet, say Bill Gates, the founder of Microsoft. Assume his net worth to be close to $80 billion, with the total capital of the others around a few million. How much of the total wealth would he represent? 99.9%? Indeed, all the others would represent no more than a rounding error for his net worth, the variation of his personal portfolio over the past second. For someone's weight to represent such a share, he would need to weigh 50 million pounds. Try it again with, say, book sales. Line up 1,000 authors or people begging to get published but calling themselves authors instead of waiters, and check their book sales. Then add the living writer who currently has the most readers. J.K. Rowling, the author of the Harry Potter series with several hundred million books sold, will dwarf the remaining thousand authors with, say collectively, a few hundred thousand readers at most. Try it also with academic citations, the mention of one academic by another academic in a formal publication, meta references, income, company size, and so on. Let us call these social matters, as they are man-made as opposed to physical ones, like the size of waistlines. In Extremistan, inequalities are such that one single observation can disproportionately impact the aggregate or the total. So, while weight, height, and calorie consumption are from Mediocristan, wealth is not. Almost all social matters are from Extremistan. Another way to say it is that social quantities are informational, not physical. You cannot touch them. Money in a bank account is something important, but certainly not physical. As such, it can take any value without necessitating the expenditure of energy. It is just a number. Note that before the advent of modern technology, wars used to belong to Mediocristan. It is hard to kill many people if you need to slaughter them one at a time. Uh, Today, with tools of mass destruction, all it takes is a button, a nutcase, or a small error to wipe out the planet. Look at the implications for the black swan. Extremistan can produce black swans and does, since a few occurrences have had huge influences on history. This is the main idea of this book. Extremistan and knowledge. While this distinction between Mediocristan and Extremistan has severe ramifications for both social fairness and the dynamics of events, let us see its application to knowledge, which is where most of its value lies. If a Martian came to Earth and engaged in the business of measuring the heights of the denizens of this happy planet, he could safely stop at 100 humans to get a good picture of the average height. If you live in Mediocristan, you can be comfortable with what you have measured, provided that you know for sure that it comes from Mediocristan. You can also be comfortable with what you have learned from the data. The epistemological consequence is that with Mediocristan style randomness, it is not possible to have a black swan surprise such that a single event can dominate a phenomenon. I emphasize possible because the chance of these occurrences is typically in the order of 1 in several trillion, as close to impossible as it gets. Uh, Primo, the first 100 days should reveal all you know to know about the data. Secondo, even if you do have a surprise, as we saw in the case of the heaviest man, it would not be consequential. If you are dealing with quantities from Extremistan, you will have trouble figuring out the average from any sample, since it can depend so much on one single observation. The idea is not more difficult than that. In Extremistan, one unit can easily affect the total in a disproportionate way. In this world, you should always be suspicious of the knowledge you derive from data. This is a very simple test of uncertainty that allows you to distinguish between the two kinds of randomness. Capiche? What you can know from data in Mediocristan augments very rapidly with the supply of information, but knowledge in Extremistan grows slowly and erratically with the addition of data, some of it extreme, possibly at an unknown rate. Wild and mild. If we follow my distinction of scalable versus non-scalable, we can see clear differences shaping up between Mediocristan and Extremistan. Here are a few examples. Matches that seem to belong to Mediocristan, subjected to what we call type 1 randomness. Height, weight, calorie consumption, income for a baker, a sole restaurant owner, a prostitute, or an orthodontist, gambling profits, in a very special case, assuming the person goes to a casino and maintains a constant betting size, car accidents, mortality rates, IQs, as measured. Matters that seem to belong to Extremistan, subjected to what we call type 2 randomness. Wealth, income, book sales per author, book citations per author, name recognition as a celebrity, number of references on Google, population of cities, uses of words in the vocabulary, number of speakers per language, damage caused by earthquakes, deaths in wars, deaths from terrorist incidents, sizes of planets, sizes of companies, stock ownership, height between species, consider elephant and mice, financial markets, but your investment manager does not know it, commodity prices, inflation rates, economic data. The Extremistan list is much longer than the prior one. The tyranny of the accident. Another way to rephrase the general distinction is as follows. Mediocristan is where we must endure the tyranny of the collective, the routine, the obvious, and the predicted. Extremistan is where we are subjected to the tyranny of the singular, of the accidental, the unseen, and the unpredicted. As hard as you try, you will never lose a lot of weight in a single day. You need the collective effect of many days, weeks, even months. Likewise, if you work as a dentist, you will never get rich in a single day, but you can do very well over 30 years of motivated, diligent, disciplined, and regular attendance to teeth drilling sessions. If you are subject to Extremistan-based speculation, however, you can gain or lose your fortune in a single minute. Table 1 summarizes differences between the two dynamics, to which I will refer in the rest of the book. Confusing the left column with the right one can lead to dire or extremely lucky consequences. Table 1. Mediocristan, Extremistan. Non-scalable, scalable. Mild or type 1 randomness, wild, even super wide or type 2 randomness. The most typical member is mediocre. The most typical is either giant or dwarf, that is, there is no typical member. Winners get a small segment of the total pie. winner take almost all effects. Example, audience of an opera singer before the gramophone. Today's audience for an artist. More likely to be found in our ancestral environments. More likely to be found in our modern environments. Impervious to the black swan, vulnerable to the black swan. Subject to gravity, there are no physical constraints on what a number can be. Corresponds generally to physical quantities, that is height. Corresponds to numbers, say wealth. As close to utopian equality as reality can spontaneously deliver, dominated by extreme winner-take-all inequality. Total is not determined by a single instance of observation. Total will be determined by a small number of extreme events. When you observe for a while, you can get to know what's going on. It takes a long time to know what's going on. Tyranny of the collective, tyranny of the accidental. Easy to predict from what you see and extend to what you do not see. Hard to predict from past information. History crawls, history makes jobs. Events are distributed according to the bell curve or its variations. What I call probability distribution here is the model used to calculate the odds of different events, how they are distributed. When I say that an event is distributed according to the bell curve, I mean that the Gaussian bell curve after C.F. Gauss, more on him later, can help provide probabilities of various occurrences. The distribution is either Mandelbrownian gray swans, tractable scientifically, or totally intractable black swans. This framework, showing that Extremistan is where most of the black swan action is only a rough approximation. Please, do not platonify it, don't simplify it beyond what's necessary. Extremistan does not always imply black swans. Some events can be rare and consequential, but somewhat predictable, particularly to those who are prepared for them and have the tools to understand them, instead of listening to statisticians, economists, and charlatans of the bell curve variety. They're near black swans. They're somewhat tractable scientifically. Knowing about their incidence should lower your surprise. These events are rare but expected. I call this special case of gray swans Mandelbrownian randomness. This category encompasses the randomness that produces phenomena commonly known by terms such as scalable, scale invariant, power laws, Pareto-Zipf laws, Yule's law, Paretian stable processes, Levi's table, and fractal laws. And we will leave them aside for now, since they will be covered in some depth in part 3. They are scalable according to the logic of this chapter, but you can know a little more about how they scale since they share much with the laws of nature. You can still experience severe black swans and mediocristan, though not easily. How? You may forget that something is random, think that it is deterministic, then have a surprise. Or you can tunnel and miss on a source of uncertainty, whether mild or wild, owing to lack of imagination. Most black swans result from this tunneling disease, which I will discuss in chapter 9. This has been a literary overview of the central distinction of the book, offering a trick to distinguish between what can belong in mediocristan and what belongs in extremistan. I said that I will get into a more thorough examination in part 3, so let us focus on epistemology for now and see how the distinction affects our knowledge. So this is the end of chapter 3, and I hope you did like it. Yeah, I really enjoy this chapter. Actually, the same as with all the other chapters I have read previously. Yeah. Now, don't forget that we have a server on Discord, and we can all go there and discuss some ideas and share anything that you have after I have read this chapter. So see you later then, I think in a couple of weeks, again it will be a Sunday. Yeah, but now, mm, I'm waiting for you in the on the server, and see you then. Bye.